Welcome in, everyone. We're excited to have you on this week. With me, I have a very special guest, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So I will let you take it away.
Yeah, so my name is Marlee. Pronouns are she, her. I'm based in what's known as Toronto. I have a background in social work and also somatic sex education. But like so many of us, what drives my work first and foremost is lived experience as a sexual violence survivor, as someone who navigated the court process and then ended up fighting for a restorative justice outcome and feeling very privileged to have experienced that. I stepped into a role of advocacy from there and have just been rolling with that. I'm also a Sagittarius, a queer human, a dog mom, and a whole bunch of other things.
Yes, yes, awesome. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Um, so let's kind of dive in. For those of you who don't know who Marley is, can you share more of your story and what brought you into the work that you do?
Yeah. So, like I said, I have a background in social work. So, I was already really passionate about like challenging gender based violence and objectification. But what really got me into this specific space, like I said, was lived experience. So, while I was doing my social work degree in college, that's when I experienced sexual violence, rape from a stranger. And, that really sent me into, to say the least, a spiral and very, very,
Mhm.
very low place of, not being okay, dealing with panic attacks and all kinds of things. And I kind of went through the motions of what we're told and from dominant systems like you're supposed to do after something like that. And I started by going to the hospital. I did a rape kit, and it kind of led to me. Uh-oh, they're about to start. Okay, let me know if the construction gets bad, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Like, hear that?
No,
Okay.
nothing.
Um, so it kind of led to me, yeah, reporting to the police and going through the court process for 3 years. And for those of us who are familiar with that process from personal experience or client work or whatever, we probably know how painful and re-traumatizing it can be. And that's certainly what I experienced. And so by the time I was subpoenaed for the criminal trial, it had been 3 years, and I was pretty much like, I don't want to do this, screw this. And at the same time, I felt a lot of devastation around the idea of giving up on it, dropping the charges. And I kind of had a friend ask me, like, if anything was possible, what would meaningful justice look like to you? And that's when I essentially described restorative justice without having the name for it. So I said, like, these
Mm,
are things that I really need after this experience. Like, I need to ask the questions I've had for years. I need him to do deep work and actually change. Like, I need to voice the impact without having to show up as a quote, quote, perfect victim. And my friend was kind of like, well, you should try and make that happen.
mm,
And I started doing research at that point, and that's when I found restorative justice, which was such an amazing moment and also a frustrating one because I was like, why did no one ever mention an alternative to the punitive system?
yeah.
Um, so I started fighting for that outcome. And thanks to one amazing Crown attorney, or in the States, you'd say prosecutor, who really understood why I wanted this and also just cared about what the
Mhm.
survivor in front of her needed, she was able to fight for the restorative outcome. And for me, what that meant was that my assailant went to therapy for 7 months. And then we eventually met in a circle process. And it really, really blew my mind in terms of how healing it was.
Mm,
So, after that, I really just became an advocate for restorative justice for sexual violence. And the first goal I had was like, I just want everyone to know this option exists. And then as I've gone deeper into this work, it's like, and I want anyone who resonates with it to have access to it because there seems to be so many barriers around it. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those. But yeah, that's kind of what led me to the work. And as I've shared my story with the world and with the media, I've heard from thousands and thousands of survivors. And I still hear from people every day who just share this sentiment of like, I really wish I knew about this option before. And so that's really the drive for me in sharing this and doing this advocacy work again and again.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's to have choice and to have autonomy and to have another option rather than just being funneled into a system that is so broken and re-traumatizing is incredible. And that's, I mean, it's, I think of the amount of strength it would take um, to face the man who raped you. Like, that's really, really incredible. And even to be able to approach it with such compassion of even giving opportunity to speak to experience or even having to face again, that's really mind blowing. Really, really mind blowing. Um, and I'm sure, like you said, so healing because it's that closure. I think of the any violent act that happens against a human and the lack of closure that can fester in one's mind or one's body. And so having opportunity to close that and move forward. Um, wow.
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What has it been like to have a platform to empower um, people who have suffered violent acts against them?
Mm. Um, well, I think it's really meaningful. I think a lot of survivors can relate to this idea of like healing through meaning making and turning painful experiences into impactful one. I think there's a lot of healing that's come with that. Like for myself, I think there's a lot of beautiful solidarity that's come with that. Like I feel so connected to a global community of survivors. And it's like, the club no one wants to be part of, but once you are, it can be really powerful to have that connection. And then it really is just, I think, hearing from people every day who have these experiences. Like I said, it kind of lights a fire for me to keep going because, on one hand, I'm connecting with survivors who are like, wow, I really wish I could access this. I really wish someone had told me about this. And then at the same time, I'm connecting with a lot of people who hold positions of authority in different institutions, whether it's law enforcement or academic spaces, who say, like, no, we're not going to do this. No survivor would actually want this. And so
Mm,
to hold those contradicting things at once makes me be even more like, no, listen, like, so many people really do. And so I kind of feel like a bit of like a megaphone in this movement of like, hey world, this exists, but also a bridge of being like, look, these people want this and these people need to know that they want this, or look, these people want this and these organizations are offering it. Like, just kind of connecting the people that need to be connected in order to make this more of an accessible thing.
mhm. Yeah, and I imagine there's a lot of that work to be done. And I think of like your social work background and like that you're doing social work through this lens of changing the way that the world experiences or women experience or men experience um trauma on an institutional systemic level. Um it sounds like a weighty responsibility though, like where you're constantly um having to kind of dig into um personal experience or have things come up or triggers or I mean this is something that doesn't just like go away but it like continues on and I'm not speaking for you but like whether it's my own my own trauma like my own role as a therapist, right? Like when I work with clients it's like ugh, that triggers me and my story and then how do I move forward with that? What do I do with it? So how do you take care of yourself in what you do, how do you have support not just on a global level, which I'm sure feels amazing, but also like on a personal level? Yeah.
Good question. I mean, it's definitely not something that I'm like have mastered. I think it's an ongoing learning and I think it ebbs and flows too. It's like there's times where I'm like, oh, I'm so on it with the self-care and community care. And then there's times where I'm like, oh, I forgot that I'm human too, to quote your podcast. So it's an ongoing thing for sure, but there's definitely I mean, luckily I'm kind of like obsessed with self-help and self-growth and healing, right? So that helps, but I really I like have journaled since I was really little. And I think writing has always been a way for me to like process some feels. I'm actually working on like writing my story as a book right now. And while that sounds like, oh, that's another job, I'm like, yes, but it's like something about the artistry of processing is really nice.
Mhm.
Um, I have a little puppy and I'm pretty amazed by how like pets are such little therapy dogs. Same with my partner. Um, I feel like having my partner living with my partner and like having this home space where I can just be, where I can fall apart, where I can be messy, where I can be like far from put together, where I can voice the impacts of my work, like stuff like that, where I can numb out and watch like stupid reality TV, like
Yeah.
sometimes that's needed as well. Um, Time in nature feels really important. I really like tapping. I really like dancing. That's also been something that I've grown up with in terms of like emotional processing in an embodied way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, all kinds of things. And I feel like I need to get better right now at community self-care. Like I said before we hit play, I was like, I'm feeling kind of isolated with this like entrepreneur structure where I'm
Yeah.
either um, behind my computer at home, or I'm like at conferences and meeting all these wonderful people, and it's like one extreme or the other. So I'm like, I definitely need more of a community care thing happening. So that's something I'm calling in.
Yeah. And that can be hard as an adult, right? Like making friends as an adult can be really awkward.
Yeah.
As kids, we just like run up to someone and like, hey, you want to play this game? And they're like, sure. And you're like, great, we're besties. As adults, it doesn't quite work that way. Unfortunately, I wish it did. And I'm sure a lot of people wish it was easier.
Mhm.
But that's awesome that you have just the space to process. And I hear that in the writing. It is such a creative flow process, and it's one that can take a long time. And so, even like resting in the work that we do is so important, and knowing where to rest and who you can rest with. And that is essential to our own health and well being when we're in a healing, helping field. Yeah.
Yes. And I totally failed to mention the kind of obvious one, which is like going to therapy.
Yes,
I
therapy
like, I was,
help.
oh yeah, there's also that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if folks are able to access it, I think it's like such a huge help in life.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What would you, um, for maybe a human that has experienced sexual assault, sexual violence, and feels like they need to sit in that by themselves, what would you say to them? What would you encourage for them?
I mean, I think sometimes like I think there's a difference between solitude and isolation. Like I think everyone needs moments to themselves to kind of like decompress, regulate, process, like build relationship with themselves, like rest. Like I do think that's important. So I would never be like, you should never be alone. But I think at the same time, like community connection is not only so important, but it can be so healing. Like I know for me, the moment I stepped into community, I actually just posted about this today, like the power of survivor solidarity. Because for me, it was really the moment that I stepped into like a survivor support group space and met people who had been through the same thing that I was able to like challenge self-blame, let go of some shame, feel less alone, feel like kind of normalize the responses I was having, or at least validate them, because it was easy
Mm,
to like, I've lost it. What's wrong with me? Why am I so impacted? Like all these judgmental things. And meeting people who were going through it and feeling love and compassion for them helped me feel that for myself, and vice versa. So I think it's just like such a powerful thing to lean into survivor spaces. And it's like, if you're listening to this podcast, then it's you likely have access to at least like some kind of device. So even if there's not something local in your area or it feels hard to access, there is so many like amazing online spaces as well, even like podcasts to listen to, and just reach out to people, like even Instagram pages that are building community. I just think that challenging isolation is such an important part of challenging the shame we might carry around trauma.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, shame is an incredibly powerful emotion that definitely keeps us out of community, out of accessing support or help, or even using our voice. So I hear that. And I mean, we live in a world today that is very accessible, right, through technology. So there really is no reason as to physically why you couldn't access a community of some type or support. Um, yeah, yeah, that is helpful. That is helpful. Um, I think in my work, I come across a lot of individuals who aren't aren't taught. We don't talk about it as far as like body boundaries, consent, health and safety, even the ability to say no, or what it means if something does happen. Like it isn't our responsibility, to pick up the pieces and have it all figured out and fix it or make it better, or make it even tolerable for other people to understand our experience.
Mhm.
Um, so it's I think encouraging to hear your story, um, because you talk about kind of the low points and the high points, and right, I really hear this sense of like, it was a friend who got you back into recommitting to what you needed to then move forward. So that support plays such an integral role in healing.
Yeah. No, it really does. And I mean, I think part of what she did for me too, and being like, what would a meaningful process look like too, is like it allowed me to imagine something different from what this dominant system had already kind of handed to me and been like, this is what legitimate justice looks like. So for her to be like, what would it actually look like to you? That helped me turn back towards my own body and my own needs. And then I voiced my needs, and she like was so quick to validate them and be like, "Yeah, you deserve to have those then." And I don't know if I could have got there myself, of being like, I'm going to validate these enough to really fight for them.
Mm,
I think on my own, maybe I'd just be like, these needs don't fit with the current system. That really sucks. I'll either have to keep enduring the current system or I'll have to give up on this whole thing. And she helped me be like, no, what you need matters. Like that should happen.
mm, mm. Which is like, I mean, as much as, right, we talk about power dynamic being this uh not so favorable thing, like sometimes we need someone who is in a position of power to say like, you matter, your needs can be heard, I'm hearing you, let's go get it.
Mhm.
So it just can sometimes take that one person, or that one person in that system to make a really big change.
Yeah, and it feels like a pretty like, it's such a beautiful thing, but it's also kind of simple just to be like, "That matters, you deserve that." Like, um, so it's like, we all deserve someone to be that for us, but we can also all easily be that for someone.
Hmm.
I think part of that does require us to like dream bigger than the current systems we have, or at least dream outside of the box in a way.
Oh, totally. Totally. And I think especially I was just having a conversation around handing the power back to the people and like as a person, I do believe in body trust and I do believe in wisdom, like self-wisdom. And so I'm a firm believer if we just create the space for someone to really um, hear themselves, see themselves, feel themselves, understand what they need and want, that level of empowerment shifts, right? Oftentimes, as people, we just need space and support and validation.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's like complicated, but simple and sweet in a lot of ways when you like bring it back to that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What has life been like? And you kind of spoke to it as far as being an extrovert and wanting more community support, but just, I mean, being able to trust yourself in this process and go full time into speaker, advocate, trainer role, like that's a huge leap. Like, what have you learned about yourself even in that process?
That's a good question.
I try, it's my job.
I think it's just that I like really love connection, and I really love I guess it's like I really love emotional connection because I like moving people in a more emotional way. And I think what it kind of comes back to is like a love for storytelling, because I did grow up in dance and then I've always done writing, and then now I'm doing this. And in many ways, it feels quite similar because, like, my goal with dance, even though, like, yes, growing up, I was like, I want a first place ribbon, like that definitely was,
Yes.
but I also was like, I want to make the audience feel something. Like I want to move people to tears, like, that kind of thing. And I think it's a similar um like, yeah, artistry that I tap into now, where I'm like, I want to make people feel connected to this topic. I don't just want them to learn something about this topic. I want them to feel something about it. And a big part of that is like, I really believe that that's what catalyzes action. Like, yes, I can mentally grasp a concept and definition up here, but if someone's story moves me to tears, then like I won't forget that. And that will impact the way I like move forward and engage with these systems and stuff in the world. And like, that's at least how I think, and that's kind of what excites me. It's like when I see like one that sticks out is like I did a talk for judges in a courtroom, and like one of the judges was this like white cis man, and he was just very skeptical to listening to a survivor and like to everything I was saying. And by the end of the talk, he was like in tears, and he was like, that really hit me, like, I really felt that, and it really gave me answers as to, like, why I've been feeling kind of nauseous about the job that I'm doing, and, like, it's
Mm,
making me question all this. And that to me is such like, that's kind of why I do this work, because it's like, if someone can be moved in that way, I'm so, um, optimistic that that can lead to change, even if it takes some time.
hmm. Well, and I think being obviously very aligned with natural gifts and having that really lead the work you're doing is so
Mhm.
helpful because you're very clear on your purpose. You're very
Mhm.
clear on your intention and your want and your need. So I could see where that would definitely feel good and not feel necessarily like work, doing air quotes. Um, yeah. When we think about longevity in the work you do, like where do you want to be? Where do you want to go with it? Like, you you mentioned a book, writing your
Mhm.
story. What else?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big dreamer. I mean, I can honestly say that a lot of the work I'm doing now is like, wow, this is totally like things I dreamed or vision boarded about. Like,
Mm.
um, even like I just spoke at a conference in Belfast and I was like, speaking alongside the creator of internal family systems and the creator of polyvagal theory and like
Wow.
Guru Mate and all these like incredible people that I've really and do really look up to. So that feels like a huge gift. So in that way, I'm like more of what I'm already doing is kind of like the dream. I'm not totally sure. Like I have thought before about like going more into a therapy route and having a consistent practice there because like I said, I do hear from survivors so much. But I do really love that kind of macro work of like speaking with big groups, like advocacy, um, playing some kind of role and making this more accessible on like a policy level would be cool. I definitely love to write like several books on this. um, Podcasting. I really like media as a lens for as a pathway for making change because like
Mm.
I am a pop culture girly, so I'm like I do like that route of being like let's make major change here. So maybe more work with like media, documentaries, who knows, but I do really like that like kind of I guess it's kind of front facing like movement work, even though sometimes I'm like, this is tiring. But
Yeah.
like down, I'm like, it also really lights me up when I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's how you know you're in your passion, and I think, I mean, I do a lot of one-on-one work and which is fabulous. Love it. Wouldn't trade it for the world. And also the impact you have when you're speaking to a group of people or you're speaking to people with influence, like judges, the crown, like there's bigger movement than just one person. So yeah, that ripple effect is huge. What's it been like being able to speak in and next to these, I don't know what to call him, like, I mean, like Gabor, like he's a legend. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
They're like the dads of therapy. They're like
yeah, they are. They are. They are. And they're of an older generation, and like, you're of a younger generation. So even like, you know, kind of, yeah, bringing forth the next generation of, um, whether we're talking mental health or trauma, surviving, or health and wellness preaching, like whatever we're doing.
Mhm.
What's that been like for you?
Yeah. I think it's really like humbling in a lot of ways. And I think it's like there's the two wolves inside all of us and like I can either go into like comparison mode or I can be like just kind of show up with humility and be like and kind of view these people as elders because like yeah you're right like some of them are like way older um and I really do like value the wisdom that elders have, which is such a contrast to like our colonial context where we're like old people disappear because they have wrinkles and now irrelevant and without worth. Like, that's kind of the way our culture works. But being like this person has so much wisdom and has like paved these paths and like so much of the work I'm doing is possible because of the people who have come before me. So I think when I step in and really embrace that I'm like the youngest one in the room. Like the conference in Belfast, I was like the baby of the conference. Like every speaker was like there was one other speaker who was about 10 years older than me, and her and I were like, we're sticking together, we're the little conference babies. Everyone else was like 50 and up. And the first thing I had was like imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
why am I here? I'm not qualified. I don't have the same accolades as Gabor Mate, and then shifting into that space of like, wow, I'm so freaking grateful to be here. I do have a really important message to share, I believe in my capacity to share it. It's much bigger than myself. So like being in service of the message. And then also yeah, just being so grateful to learn from and be in the same orbit as some of these people. And like, I'm like exploring collaboration with some of them. And I'm like, this is such a beautiful thing because it, like you're saying, it's like they are going to be passing the torch down to generations.
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful thing to be like, how can we um, keep this going and be collaborative in that way? I think that's good as well. And then also the, you know, the theme of your podcast, like everyone's a human, like they're just humans too, right? Like we all are. So I think erasing some of that, like, or challenging some of the like hierarchy or pedestaling of people is like can be loving as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it is, definitely honor that like approach with humility and especially with elders. Like, um, I think it is a very decolonized um, way of being present in something that could totally like just gut you as far as imposter syndrome. Like, but being again like very true to your mission and very trusting in your experience and your messaging is important because you have just as much to offer as they do. I don't think years make you wise, or more powerful or whatever it is. And I think of even that storytelling and um, when we were at the Justice's trauma conference and hearing even like Gabor speak, like it is a story. Like, yeah, that's, how he speaks. So I could even see where it feels very like, prone to like collaboration or aligned and even how you present information or you reach people on an emotional level, I think that's like um very powerful. You're right. People won't forget a felt experience. They do forget data and knowledge and statistics and like no one wants to be another number. We want to be seen as a human with a human experience. And we want others to connect to that. So that's awesome that you're able to do that. And I feel like you definitely should be feeling very proud of yourself that you are where you are today. I mean, it's just incredible.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. That's nice.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's true. Like, you know, um, even the full kind of circle you've done, like you started getting this degree and now you're doing that work, but on a macro sense, and you're making such a big positive impact in the world is pretty awesome.
Thank
So
I feel like I'm like, you sound like my mom and my girlfriend.
you're welcome.
No, but it's important to, yeah, like remind ourselves for everyone, remind ourselves of that. And like, because it can be so easy to be like, what do I still need to do ahead that we forget to like look back and be like, look how far I've come.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I yeah, I hear that. I validate that. I'm always in the like the future worry of like, oh, if I did this and it's easy to do that, especially when you're like focused on more media driven exposure. Like there's constantly shit to do and it's exhausting and um so having that balance too of like the self-care, taking care of yourself, having time to rest and being around people, um, is delicate, fragile at times. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Where can people find you?
So people can find me. Well, I guess first and foremost, if anybody wants more information on restorative justice or whether they want to potentially access it and find an organization, or they just want to learn more about it through like podcasts, documentaries, books, I do have a restorative justice resource guide that anyone can access for free, and that's at marleeliss.com/resource. So marleeliss.com/resource. And then all of my stuff is just my name. So I do post on Instagram a lot and share a lot of resources and try to build some beautiful global community there. And so that's just Marlee Liss. And then my website is also marleeliss.com. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll link everything, everyone, so you can find her. Um, thank you for being here. Very excited to have you on and have just, I mean, a voice who can really provide a lot of comfort and safety for so many others. So I appreciate your presence and your willingness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for having me and for all the work that you're doing and conversations you're starting. I think it's so needed. So thank you. This was nice for me as well.
awesome. All right. Have a good evening because you're in a different time zone.